This is episode 72 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 72 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Today I have Diana House on the show, and it was a doozy. I know that sounds cheesy, but I mean it. It was a really cool talk. Diana is a very accomplished investor. She actually started out as a lawyer and then got into doing her own developments after selling a couple of e-commerce companies. She's a serial entrepreneur, and she was just filled with wisdom. One of the conversations that we had, we really got into the nuts and bolts of development, as well as doing some commercial BRRRs and what goes into that, but we got into the mindset of how to approach the current situation. Of course, none of this is advice, but we both gave our thoughts as to how to deal with the current virus lockdown and what we're doing and how we're preparing so that we're most able to react going forward, and of course, most able to weather the storm in the long run. This is something that I really think you're going to benefit from hearing, and as always, I certainly appreciate your feedback if you'd ever like to reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook. A couple of housekeeping items. One, if you are new to this podcast, of course, make sure you head back to episode 1 and really dive into the earlier episodes where we dig deep on the numbers. I also have a cash flow sheet available for anybody that wants it at Andrew-Hines/cash flow if you'd like to use the sheet that I use to analyze deals. As always, if you haven't already, please take a moment to hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell, as well as review this podcast on Apple Podcasts and share it with anyone you think might benefit from hearing it. It certainly would be appreciated by me, and it will help the podcast to reach more people and help them as well. As I record this intro, it is June 26th, and of course, the world is still in an absolute state of craziness. Of course, we have the lockdown, but even more concerning to me is the situation going on in the United States with statues being torn down. And if you haven't noticed, we're sort of living in a cancel culture where free speech is not all right. This is definitely a slippery slope and highly concerning to me. I firmly do believe that free speech must be preserved. Friends, again, I just want to ask that you please, when you see things, when you think things, when you have an opinion, please speak out. Don't be afraid to share that. We really do need to make sure that we don't end up like Venezuela, because these things can happen here. If you look back in history, I'm pretty sure everyone thought that a revolution could never happen in their country. But if we let enough things go by without saying anything, then we might be surprised in a bad way. So I just wanted to throw that out there because I do believe in it. And as you know, I speak my mind on this podcast. So that's my little spiel for today. Without further ado, please enjoy this absolute grand slam of an episode, which I know you're going to love, with Diana House, episode 72. Here you go. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Diana House on the podcast today. Diana, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Andrew.
So I've heard your name around a bunch, and I know that you're well known in the investor community, but I don't know too much further than that. And I was hoping you could enlighten me. You're in London, Ontario, correct?
Yeah, we in normal times, we're obviously filming this during the Q-teen. Yeah. We split time between London and Toronto, but we've been 90% in London the past few months.
Okay. And I know you have a couple different businesses that you're involved in. So why don't you just start off kind of telling me a bit about that, and then we'll get into your real estate stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So my high level is I actually am a lawyer turned serial entrepreneur. So went to law school, then ran away to Bali and started my first e-commerce company, which is super random. I've sold 2 e-commerce companies, and then now very focused on the real estate space. Within real estate, similar to you, do things in the mortgage space. So we're a private lender, a mortgage administrator. We do real estate development and then real estate investing.
So you just do everything is basically the short of it.
I guess so. I try not to do everything.
Yeah.
I really make a concerted effort to be very focused, but it seems like it's hard in real estate to only do one thing. And then most recently, with the pandemic, about a week after everything shut down, I started a disinfectant fogging company called Go Fog It.
I saw that. I was curious what that was. I just saw the name. I didn't know what you were doing there. So, okay. So you don't waste any opportunity is what you're saying.
Apparently. I think I must be a workaholic.
Okay. Did you go to Ivy? Did I read that right?
I've done the Ivy leadership program.
Okay.
I went to Western, Ryerson, and Mac, and then I went to law school in Australia at Bond.
Okay.
But I'm definitely like a lifelong learner. I think there was like a kind of a 5-year period where I think I probably spent about $500,000 in personal development, going to like everything from like Tony Robbins to mastermind talks, pretty much anything I get my hands on, to hanging out with Richard Branson at his private island a couple of times with some high level masterminds. So yeah, definitely a lifelong learner. Did not finish that after university, nor am I close to finishing that anytime soon.
That's a very good way of being.
Yeah.
I can definitely relate. Like I actually just find that I want to, like, I just want to know more. So I'm just constantly trying to understand new perspectives, like new ideas. But tell me a bit about these companies. Like, I mean, clearly entrepreneurialism is in your blood here, and, it's carried into real estate, which I think is a natural progression. But talk to me about these earlier companies and what you did and what the ideas were.
Sure. So my husband's name is Jeff House. And his last name is like perfect for real estate. He actually got headhunted out of university. His dream was to be a pharmaceutical sales rep because he heard they went golfing a lot. And instead, by complete fluke, based off his very beefed up LinkedIn profile, I guess would have been now probably 12 years ago, he got recruited to work at CV Richard Ellis. On the commercial real estate side. So Jeff literally started at the bottom, making, $30K, and really learning the real estate business on the corporate side from the bottom to the top. So yeah, my real estate story definitely starts with him. I was always into real estate from afar, but never knew what my entry point was going to be. I used to like journal in my early 20s, and real estate kept coming up, but I just didn't know how is that going to look like. Our family was involved in some real estate ventures when I was growing up. My mom was a realtor. Okay. For a short period of time before she kind of stayed home with the kids. My dad kind of told her, you need to stay home with the kids, because his business was erupting. We're an entrepreneurial family in the manufacturing space. So because of that, I had that very early exposure to deals. Okay. And I remember in my, probably around 10 years old, my mom buying a power sale. And I remember it was like very hysterical because she had just bought a beautiful house in North London put in a pool, and then on a whim bought a power sale from someone who was going bankrupt for a fantastic property, but it was literally mid-renovation. So definitely had some exposure there. And then also my parents had what I call a failed rental. They bought like maybe the worst rental in London, Ontario, and I saw them slave for years trying to make this thing work. So I had very like mixed thoughts about real estate. And although my family is very successful, they were not very successful in real estate. It was more in the manufacturing space. Mm-hmm. So when I met Jeff, he really catapulted me into the real estate space. And I remember one of our first dates, Jeff's a bit of, he's toned it down a bit, but he used to be more of a wild man. One of our first dates, he was buying a property sight unseen over the phone. So I was like, what is this world? And like, what is going on here? So during our honeymoon, we were in Hawaii and Australia. We were actually doing our first development project from afar, which I do not recommend doing that. It was a very painful process, but really, really great outcome in the end. But that kind of, I think, was our beginning of, funny enough, both development and private lending. Those two projects that we did at the beginning, the Sight Unseen project, and we did a tear down duplex sever into two linked homes that were a really big success in London, very beautiful, modern. That was our first experience with private lending as a borrower.
Okay, so you did like a semi-detached, you tore down and built a semi-detached, like side by side?
I don't know if it's called a semi-detached. It's a separate house, but it's called like a linked home.
Okay. How is it linked though?
It's linked like somewhere, I think in the foundation or something like that. There's like just one piece. Okay. So I don't think it's classified as a semi-detached.
But on two separate parcels of land. So they just meet on the property line.
Yes.
Briefly.
Yes.
Never heard of that. Okay. So it's similar to a semi-detached if it's not a semi-detached.
Yeah. I mean, really, like, I think we sold these properties when we sold them for, I think it was the highest price per square foot in London. After we did it. So it was a very unique product. They're on Kenneth Ave in London on a park. And they were the first like modern development in London, Ontario, which was, it's very Toronto-esque, but London's a little bit behind on the times.
Yes, definitely.
Why that project was really interesting for us was we got private financing.
Yeah.
And when I say we, my husband got private financing before he met me, or before I was like involved. I think we were still dating.
Yeah.
And when I found out about private financing, I was horrified. Mm-hmm. I was like, wait, you spend 10% interest on this? Like, this is crazy. And I remember speaking to my father about this, and my dad's like, that's a great business. We should get into that business. Mm-hmm. So we became private lenders and got into the private mortgage space because of our first development project, and seeing kind of that opening in the market. And because my husband is so skilled with the numbers of finance, we were really able to differentiate ourselves and do more complex private lending as opposed to just the like single family residential home. So on the lending side, our sweet spot is the 1 to 10 million debt requirement, and we love a bit of complexity. So whether it's construction finance or whether it is a portfolio of properties, or some other kind of layer of complexity, the stuff that the average private lender who maybe isn't that sophisticated stays away from, that's kind of our bread and butter, and the things that we really like on the lending side. And then high level on the development side, we're all over the place. Call us diverse. We're doing right now currently a 23.5 acre land development site. We're doing a multifamily residential site. Those are kind of our two big projects right now. And then historically we focused on like commercial BRRRs. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so when you say commercial, give me an example. What would be an example of that?
Yeah, yesterday was actually refi day for our last commercial BRRRR. So what that one was it was an office redevelopment. So we off-market purchased a pretty much like an abandoned, it was technically zoned medical. It was all medical at the time. During the conditional period, we find the tenants, we create the leases. So by the time we go firm, we already have the business plan and have created that value. And then we do the renovation site. And so that one now is the home of two different head offices. One for a promotional company and then the other one for an audiologist. So we did maintain some of the medical zoning.
Okay, so you buy it. Was it vacant when you bought it?
Yes.
So that's how you get a good deal with commercial, because vacant isn't typically sought after.
Yes and no. This one, I wouldn't say we stole this site.
No.
This is very much like a legacy property. We own in London, there's a really gorgeous block, and our family now owns 3 in a row over there. The first one, we really stole this property. I wasn't running the construction finance at that point. My husband and our business partner were, and we did really well. This one, I ran the construction finance, which is probably my zone of genius, like cost control and things like that. We did not, we got it under market, but like, I wouldn't say we got a great deal. That said, we got really great tenants, and the numbers made sense. So in the end, it was infinite returns, and we got all of our capital out at the end of the 9-month project. So, I mean, we always think anytime you can do an infinite return project, even if you didn't get the best deal in the world, it still makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, because the way that capital works, the way that appreciation works and mortgage pay down works, if you can create a cash flowing product that you're in for zero, I mean, how is that not a win?
Exactly.
As long as you're economically hedged in a market that you expect to continue to go up or stay stable.
Plot twist, right? Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, when we bought this one, I was like, I do kind of feel like we're buying at the top of the market, and we knew that, and we were okay with that. And we structured the deal knowing that. And I think, you never know exactly where you are in the cycle. But we knew we're like, okay, we're not getting the best deal in the world. However, we have really strong tenants, multi-generational, a multi-generational company, strong covenant, medical is usually quite strong, and future development play. So in the future, if it came down to that, we could do a residential site on that property.
So you would take that building down and build a mixed use, or
I think
all
we
res?
Resi.
You're allowed to? The zoning would allow that, or you need to rezone?
No, we would have to rezone, but we would be able to do that. But again, that would be 10 to 20 years from now.
Okay.
So a lot of the way we think is like, what can we do now that's a really great business plan today that, 10 to 20 years from now, depending on what is going on in the world and what real estate looks like, we have other options for density.
Okay. I want to dig into this idea. Well, one, commercial ownership, but I also want to dig into the development, get an idea of what you're doing right now. You said one was townhouses. Did I hear that right? Or
so we're doing a 23.5 acre master plan right now.
Okay. So what's going to be in that master plan community?
Yeah. So it's evolving. And we had I'd say like, if you asked me Thursday, so we're at Tuesday. If you asked me Thursday last week, I would have told you one thing. Friday, we got completely annihilated on it, which is, I think, very normal in land development. There's just so many stakeholders. There's the community, the municipality, conservation. And so I would say it's an evolving situation. Jeff and I, my husband, we're very art driven. And our goal is always to change the landscape and create a very beautiful product. That coupled with like, financial excellence and making it sustainable and profitable and great, but we never just want to build something. So my goal for this site, and I can't say where it is yet because there's obviously other pieces to the puzzle that we're still trying to bring in. We're at 23 and we may be able to get to 123 eventually once we kind of get these puzzle pieces going. So yeah, this one, I think much like any master planned goal is how can you go into a region, really figure out who the people are, what their desires are, what their lifestyle is, what the culture is, and can you create a diversity of housing that fits the gaps. So this specific area doesn't have a lot of diversity in housing. So it, is mostly currently single family homes, quite large lots. And, definitely think that affordability is going to continue to be a dialogue for a long time. So our current, our first go with the draft plan definitely had diversity with townhomes, some multifamily, some single family homes, as well as some like 1-story kind of retirement living. And really part of that went with talking to the municipality and asking like, what are the requests that you guys are having? Yeah. What do people need in this area as opposed to what do we want to build? And then I think the art of it is then how do you deal with the details? So like, instead of just like doing a swim pond, a SWM stormwater management pond, how do you make it like world-class how they do in Europe? Like in Europe, there are artful swim ponds. Okay. It doesn't cost that much money to plant gorgeous trees and have beautiful benches and maybe even a walkway over an SWM pond. Not a lot of people do that in Ontario. Yeah. So that's kind of where we get really excited. How can we create connecting paths? How can we do wider walkways? How can we have trees on, one side of the sidewalk and then as well as like on the other side of the sidewalk? So that's kind of where we get really excited. How can we create a really world-class living experience while still having that affordability and dealing with like the target market and giving them kind of what they want that maybe they didn't even realize that they could get.
Yeah, you've just gotten into so many interesting things here. One, making it artful or making it beautiful is something I firmly believe in. Be excited about your work, put passion into it, make it good. But you're also talking about elements of the site plan approval process, which most people are not going to be familiar with. And when I talk about development on this show, I mentioned the concept of find out what they want, find out what the city wants, because you don't want to be at war with the city. You don't want to be fighting with them. You want them to be with you the whole way.
You really don't want to be fighting with them.
Never fight with them because they just have this ridiculous amount of power over you. You don't have power in the situation.
Well, no, you're 100% right. And even like, I'm not gonna lie, we got our butt kicked on Friday. Yeah. And there was 13 people on the call.
Oh yeah. Wow.
13 different opinions. And, there was what happened the last meeting 6 months ago. And then there's what came through this time. And there were different messages and there were different requirements. And, there was what the regulations say. So for instance, like with conservation, there's a thing called a 4 seasons EIS study. So basically in like wooded areas, you do this study, and then based on this study, it tells you, can you develop this land or not? So, you know, you could do the EIS could have a certain outcome, but technically if conservation does not want you to develop that area to the full extent, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So
you almost have to get good at asking them questions back. Well, what is your intention here? Or like, what is it that you're concerned about? Like, let's work together. So I don't want to push ideas that you're not on board with. You know, what do you want? And then, so you as a developer, are you just trying to balance all those needs?
Yeah. And by no means have I don't feel like I'm an expert at that yet. Like, I feel like I'm like feeling my way through that, going like, how do you do that? Because there's so much tension in development in this specific area. There's quite a bit of development, and then there's these parcels. So what has happened is, because no one's developed for so long, a lot of the township actually feels like they own these parcels. And they're ATVing on the parcels, for instance. So they actually feel like we're taking something away from them, even though like they don't own them. So there's a lot of challenges, I think, with land development for various reasons. And one is, usually communities are not that pro-development. You know, who would want development when they could have like all these trees and all this, you know, empty space and things like that. So I think where we have our area of opportunity with this specific site is, I have a vision in my head of why this is going to be epic. It has not been put on paper and presented yet.
Yeah, but if you have enthusiasm about it, like, you could probably sell the people in the community on the idea if you could make it great for them too. If you could find what they want. Have you done anything to try and figure that out? They really don't. No one wants it. No one wants change. It's change. Everybody resists change. And for some reason in the London area, they resist change twice as much as anybody else. I don't know why. Is this one in London, or is it?
It's really close.
Close. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've been through some of the process down there, and I know how that can be. And it's really about picking your battles. What made this a battle that you thought you could win? And what have you guys risked in the process?
For sure. Well, I mean, definitely naivety. I think like being ignorance on fire, I think takes you way too far. And I think like, you know, my background is e-commerce. I've sold 2 e-commerce companies. By the end of those 2 e-commerce companies, I was not naive about e-commerce. Like, I'm like, I know what you're signing up for when you start an e-commerce company. I think thankfully with land development, this is my first like real crack at doing this much land in one kind of chunk. So yeah, it's like, I haven't experienced the pain yet, and I'm not impatient. Like I can wait 10 years. Like, I don't have to develop this tomorrow. Like I don't have that, like, I'm 35. Okay. If it took till 45 to create like truly a legacy through this project, can I live with that? I could. So I think the one thing is I'm not that impatient about the timeline, whereas a lot of people get really frustrated with development because they think it's going to be tomorrow or next year. It's never going to be tomorrow or next year. Development is like, just go plan on the next few years of going back and forth on this. And so long as you're comfortable in that container, you know, so I think that's kind of the one piece of it. Sorry, you had 2 questions. You said, why do you think this is something? And
what have you risked? What have you risked?
Yeah. So I think the other pieces are, you know, we usually structure deals that are pretty low risk. And so how we do that is, one, bringing on strategic partners so that, you know, one, all the risk isn't on our, you know, side. And then the other thing is definitely utilizing different vehicles like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just forgot the word. Vendor take backs. Thank you. Like, and so with land, a lot of people don't know this, but the big guys, they structure large VTBs. Okay. Very, very, very large VTBs, and therefore 0 to low percent interest.
Okay, so you're just making very low interest only payments on the land right now?
I'm making no interest payments.
0 interest right now?
0 interest payments.
For how long do you have no interest
3
before?
Years.
2 years?
3 years.
3 years. That's a fantastic deal.
So again, and so I'm not going to lie, this was a really funny, okay. So the one piece is a legacy piece that, it's a long story. My father actually picked up a long time ago. The next piece was a piece that never hit the market. We negotiated on it for 3 years. And finally, it was one of those seasons where we had like 10 different deals on the table. And we actually were like, you know what? We don't even want to do this one. It's just like, we're not going to get there. There was no VTB on the table at that point. And this is where, again, the ignorance sometimes works really well. I told my husband, I said, well, don't just cancel it. Just like put your final offer in, you know? And I said, 80% VTB, 0% interest, 3 years. It may have been 75. It's 75 or 80. And my husband's like, I'm embarrassed to write that offer. And I was like, okay, well, like, is that how you get deals done? Like, you know, like, get over yourself. Like, we're going to write this offer. We write it there, said, let me see what we can do. And we got the deal. Now, I told like 20 people about this. The first 15 people were like, I've never heard of that happening. And then the last 5 people who actually know what they're doing in development, they're like, that's normal in development. The really big guys structure deals like that. So in the end, I'm actually not special. That's just what developers do. And I thankfully just got lucky. And funny enough, the reason I heard about that structure was from a private mortgage.
Okay. Like somebody like that you were dealing with for a private mortgage? I
saw a private mortgage cross my desk once where a builder had got a very similar deal. It was so cool because by the time the mortgage matured, the value went up like 50%. Yes. So he had bought the land for $1 million. After 3 years, it was worth 1.5. And I'm like, he literally put $100K in and he got a 500% return. Like, that's stupid. So I think like the cool thing about being on the lending side is you see how creative deals are structured. And then on the development side and investment side, you get to then play with that. So, you know, knowing that deal, now I know I'm like, it's actually very possible in land to get 0 or low interest rate VTBs. And like, why not ask for them?
Yeah. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. It really is the case.
Wybo and his, I've known Jeff Wybo from like age 3. So,
okay.
I see he's doing this like offer a day thing.
That's smart though. It is.
He's gonna one day he's gonna get a stupid deal.
Yeah. You just have to not worry about insulting somebody with your offer. I think if you bridge it, you just say, hey, this is what I can do.
Yeah. And take it or leave it.
Yeah. No pressure. This is what I can do.
Yeah. And eventually you're going to find someone and it's going to be the right day, the right moment in time. And they're going to be like, I'm just done with this. I want it. And then so I love it. I think why not put offers out there, see what happens. You just never know.
Okay. So I want to get a couple of contextual items with this property, just so I can use it as a sort of a case study example here. What's the total assembled cost of the different parcels? Or I'm guessing some of them were in the family already. So if you just had to put a market value on the ones that you transacted on. I
actually don't know what the market value would be right now. I mean, and there's the market value today and there's the market value 3 months ago. I don't know.
Wild guess 3 months ago.
I don't know.
Couple $1 million?
I don't know. I mean, and then you go back to how we value things.
Yeah.
So we value things very differently because if my father bought the one piece 15 years ago, how we value it is we put a 10% interest compound on his money.
Okay.
Do you know what I mean?
So you're saying you even though you're not paying interest, you still put it up, or are you paying him interest?
No.
Okay.
No. So just like in our family, we have like a baseline how we look at money.
Okay.
The baseline is if you have $1, you better be making 10 cents on that dollar at all times. So if we have made some kind of investment, like our price to be in that investment is that 10 cents on that dollar. So, you know, with my dad and his parcel, we actually like just laid it out in the compound interest of like, this is what, like, he bought it for nothing. And then there's actually a second piece that we assembled, long story short, but yeah, when we did it, but yeah, these are all like land, you don't do land if you're not going to make potential millions kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I was just trying to get an idea of the ballpark of where you're starting, but I like the concept of the 10% base rate. So I think remembering back to business school, like the internal cost of capital, like, if you're utilizing your own capital, you expect whatever it is. Like if we could put money elsewhere at 6%, so we consider that a break-even profitability.
Totally.
Totally. So that's a business concept. It's definitely a useful one. Okay, so say you've got would you say you're in the $2 to $3 million range of market value now, if you had to guess, or it could be even broader than that?
I mean, I hope that we'd be way higher.
Way higher. Okay. So like 5 million, 6 million kind of current value.
Sure.
And then you're talking about something, if it's 23.5 acres, you're talking like you could make thousands of units on that size of it.
I don't think it's thousands. It's in the hundreds.
Hundreds? So not even 1,000? Okay.
I think it's like 700.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, not building really dense then. So more like.
There's currently, and you know what? I don't think I'm counting that in my math. There's, I think in our one plan, there's a block of medium high density, which is like 4 stories of like, I think it's like 80 units per building. 240. Okay. Then you know what? We probably actually would be over 1,000 if I counted those blocks. In draft plan, we kind of like ignore those right now.
Yeah. So end valuation here, we're probably 50 million plus.
I hope so.
50 to 100, somewhere in there.
It also depends on where we jump off.
Yeah, and where the market goes. Yeah. Like, if you keep it to maturity, or if you sell it once it's site plan approved.
We probably won't build it all out.
Yeah, you could sell off sections of it.
Definitely. Like the single family homes, like we're not going to develop the single family homes kind of thing. But again, we have that flexibility with land. Do you want to take it all the way? Which again, no one would ever take it all the way unless you were a residential home builder, which we're not residential home builders. But the multifamily blocks, that is of interest for us to keep forever, to build out and keep forever. Again, Thursday, there was going to be one section that was going to be townhomes. Today, we actually might switch that strategy and do bigger lots because of some of those tensions that I had brought up.
So yeah, you're going to become a professional manager of different wants and needs. And find a way to get it done. And then there's a certain element there of what the city has in their official plan, or what the municipality has in their official plan. Are you congruent? Is your plan congruent with what they already had in their plan, or are you going to have to amend their plan?
No, I know we have to rezone. I know we have to do ZPA. I think do you know what? I don't actually. I think we're okay on OPA.
Okay. So they don't actually, so it's already congruent. But even if it wasn't, if you have the support of the community, if it kind of fits,
that's probably the one thing that's not our issue.
Okay.
We have many other issues. Like there's a servicing issue. There's an issue with the municipality and
like sewage capacity issue.
Water pumping
issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a sewage capacity issue as well. We pretty much got one of everything in this one.
Yeah.
Besides, OPA is like the one thing I'm not worried about.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're going to get our MBA in land development on this one. And part of me is like, am I really naive to think that we're going to be able to get this done? Because there was a very, very smart developer before me that has worked on this for 15 years and ran into not the whole thing. They had one piece. And part of what we've done is we've now assembled 4 pieces because we're like, okay, if we have like that mass, we can push things through. Whereas if you have a smaller group that's disjointed, half the time you're just trying to get all the developers on the same page, which you at least cut that piece out.
Well, there's maybe balancing needs there, because observationally, looking at like a project that I've worked on, and then, we had a sewage capacity issue, and then all of a sudden one of the other developers just paid to improve the capacity because they didn't want to wait.
We're in the position that we could do that, and that if we can work out a deal, that's something that we would do. Yeah.
Like, I don't think people realize it though. Like even here in Burlington where I live, all of Maple Street just got brand new sewer, brand new water main, all the connections to the individual houses, and the road got redone. And I'm like 98% sure that almost all of it was paid for by the developer that wanted to build a high rise. And
it's usually resolved through development charges.
Yeah.
You essentially strike a deal with the city. It's prepayment of development charges. This one's not as simple. There's a little bit more complexity. But again, I figure at worst, I'm going to learn a lot. And there's always ways that you can like repurpose, there's the dream plan and then there's the scaled back plan. And I think if you strike a good enough deal, you have flexibility to not have to go for that AAA result and still be okay.
Yeah, like you don't need this to be AAA by any means. Like I think even in a very, very average outcome with such a large parcel, you're going to be creating generational wealth.
For sure. Yeah. And even like our project across from Victoria Hospital in London right now. So it used to be 3 separate lots. We bought it as one parcel, I think for $450. And when we bought it, we're like, okay, worst case scenario, if we don't get approved for some crazy reason, we can go back and sever it into 3 single family lots again.
Yeah.
So we're always looking at like, what's our worst case scenario?
Is there profit in that scenario?
Yeah. I mean, it's not I wouldn't call it a win.
Yeah.
But,
but if you're not losing money, that's good.
Yeah. Like, can you get a single family lot for $150K these days?
Not really.
Not really.
It depends on where, but yeah, it's harder to find.
So that's kind of our worst case scenario. And I think like land development's always speculative.
Yeah.
It's never the sure thing. And one of my mentors, I don't know if you know Bob Siskind.
I know another Siskind lawyer.
Okay, that's his brother.
Yeah. Okay, not Bob, but yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Cool. So Bob's amazing. And I remember I called Bob before I bought one of these land pieces. I said, Bob, like this feels very speculative. And he's like, it is speculative. And that's how you make all the money. And so long as your backside is your downside and your backside is protected, it's okay to be a little bit speculative. Yeah. So long as that's not your only play and you're okay for the worst case.
That's the big thing. Be very real about the worst case and be okay with it, right? Is my worst case losing $500,000? Am I okay with taking on a few projects where it has a very low probability of losing $500,000 for the one that makes 10, 20 million, that's what I think developers have managed to balance. They've balanced the needs and their ability to take that risk. So you mentioned having
the good ones.
Yeah, the good ones. The bad ones just naively go out and get burned. I'm glad that I had the chance to get burned in my 20s because it taught me some valuable lessons that I won't so I won't repeat mistakes where it really matters, where there's real money and, big money on the line.
Have you shared these on the podcast?
Oh yeah. Okay. I've gone into them. Yeah. So for those who haven't heard, I invested in Ohio, lost a bunch of money, tried to develop in a heritage neighborhood, had to hang on to a property for like 5 years. Just not fun things and, lots of pain associated. So, but that pain is so useful. Useful. Once you've done it, then that's like your MBA in not being stupid. And
it's a really good teacher.
Oh, it's a great teacher.
It's true. Yeah, it's really, and I think I haven't experienced enough pain in land that I'm going to be naive for a little bit longer.
No, like, you're thinking about it the way I would think about it. And really, okay, so what's my worst case scenario? And am I okay with that?
Yeah.
So on the 23.5 acres, what do you see as being your worst case scenario?
The worst case scenario is putting the worst case scenario is building one house per property.
On like how many parcels? 3 parcels right now?
4 parcels.
4 parcels.
Yo, those could be sick.
Yeah, it could be some nice lots.
I don't know that. I guess that's like so not realistic. Like even the scaled down approach is like, can you sever and put properties on septic? Like there's so many layers down to worst case. And like, I mean, my dad's parcel, like he doesn't care. Like it's pennies for him. He could sit on that for like 100 years. Our piece, again, we have these VTBs, worst case scenario. If it's like, oh, this is literally a train wreck, we've lost like 100K or something. Like,
okay. Yeah. So you have a very managed, mitigated downside. And then of course, when we say worst case, that's an extremely, extremely unlikely.
Extreme worst case.
You have more likely worst case, like, not quite worst case, but more likely less good options or outcomes. And those are still probably profitable. It's really just in the absolute extreme. So what are some of the things that when you looked at it, they just gave you comfort? You mentioned looking at what the area needed. what gives you comfort about the economics of the area, about, you know, the people's intention to stay in that area?
Oh man, you're just digging on all the questions. I'm not going to tell you where this is, but
Don't tell me, but just give me general ideas.
I'm kidding. So yeah, great location. You know, a place that's very like highly desired to live in. The price for single family homes is very high.
Okay.
Like nothing, like shockingly high.
Okay.
Which is just surprising. I think when we saw the price of like a very basic single family home, it was like, again, like close to the like 758s. And we're like, this is like for not like, you know, like 1,200 square feet bungalow, just like nothing crazy. We're like, oh, this is wild. Yeah, good proximity, like close to amenities, close to highways, you know, just like all the things that people look for to live, like restaurants, grocery stores, things like that. It's kind of how I look at it, is like, we're not a real estate family. We're not a development family. And this is like our like kind of like Hail Mary of like, somehow we managed to, because of the pumping station, muster up this sizable piece of dirt that got overlooked.
Okay.
Because usually it's generations. Like you can't just buy 23.5 acres in a good area for not a lot of money, right? Like usually it's like your grandfather or your great grandfather bought this farmland, and so I feel like for us it's felt like a gift. And I mean, okay, I'll tell you one of the crazy stories about this piece of how it's got assembled. So my dad buys the first piece 15 years ago, just randomly, like so randomly, like with no real plan. Then 5 years ago, before I was even in land, I'm flipping through a whole House and Home magazine, and I see this like listing for an 8 or 9 acre parcel for like $300K or $350. And I'm like, what is this? I randomly call, I never call it these. It's connected to my dad's piece.
Oh, wow.
It's like the whole, it truly has been like the weirdest assembly. And then the piece we got last year, 3-year negotiation. And then actually the most recent piece to this, 9.5 acres, we got it in the pandemic.
Wow.
Because we negotiated for like 5 years. And I think finally they're like, oh, okay, it's the pandemic. Like this is going to go down in value. Like if this is probably the time to let go of it.
Right.
So it's been like a long game chess match to assemble all of this. And so that's why I think it feels worth it with how crazy it has been. It does feel like there's a little bit of like fate element to it, which is dangerous. Because as soon as you get emotional and as soon as you think like, oh, I'm going to do this for the art, I'm going to do this because of this legacy vision. And like, I catch myself because I'm like so obsessed with the canvas of how epic this could be that I have to like tone myself down of going like, okay, am I about to make a bad business move? Because I'm like, I have like both sides. I have like the very intense finance cost control side, and then also have the like art side. So I think that's kind of my genius when it's balanced, but when it's not balanced, it's a show.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But I mean, if you're passionate about it though, and what you're doing, like somehow it just ends up being great. And
so far so good.
So far so good. I mean, but of course, as long as you're balancing that need for costs. I've definitely had projects where it ended up being more expensive than I wanted it to be, but it's like I look at the product and I'm like, well, there's nothing I really would have wanted to skimp on here. So it is sort of what it is at that point. But my mother-in-law, Carmen, she has a way of just doing that. You know, she has a feeling about something, she has a vision, and she trusts her gut. And she's done some incredible projects and certainly built some incredible wealth. So there's something to it. That synchronicity when you know the lot beside the one that your dad owns just comes up. I don't believe totally in those coincidences. I think that you know, the stars are aligning to a certain degree. You know, because you're staying focused on what you're trying to bring into your life, right?
Totally. And I think in fairness, we're not like gambling with our last 100,000. Right.
Exactly. You're not. It's all relative to your portfolio. Like if people would have asked me about the Toronto investing option, you know, 6 months ago, I would have said, you know, Toronto could be great. Lots of people making a lot of money, but there's no plan B if you don't have cash flow. So if you're going to be doing it, I mean, it would have to be an extremely small portion of your portfolio. Because
exactly. And I think for us, like we're 90% on the conservative side. So 10% doing something more speculative, I think is a really, good fit for us.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So it's all about weighing what portion of your portfolio that is. Like, I think a good portfolio is mostly composed of cash flowing properties that cash flow well. And I think that you and I share some of those views. Why don't you just tell me what you look for in properties? If you guys are sitting on some properties or holding some properties in your portfolio, what you look for.
Yeah, so definitely like on the project, not that every project is infinite returns, but that is kind of like our target with projects.
So the perfect BRRRR, you want to get all your money back out?
We do. I think that's like one criteria that not every time, but often. And then, then obviously there is the cash part. And again, I told you what our family philosophy is on money.
It's got to be 10% or it's not profitable.
Well, yeah, because we do private mortgages, right?
Yeah.
So like, as our baseline, we have not access to an infinite amount of really good lending deals, but we have access to, a lot of really, really lending deals. So, on the passive income side, do you know Dave Osborne, or have you heard of him?
I'm not familiar, no.
He's amazing. He's American. He's like one of the top Keller Williams franchisees. I think he has 10 or 12 of them. He wrote a really good book called Wealth Can't Wait, and really talking about, setting up your portfolio in a way that you can, make enough passive income that, your whole life is taken care of and whatnot. And he set up some really fun structures around, he set his up in a very inefficient way, in the sense that on the first, he gets a passive income check. On the second, he gets a passive income, every month, he gets a check every single day of the month.
Gotcha.
That's very inefficient because it's actually way better to get it all on one day.
Yeah.
I've since realized.
True. It is true.
But so, I think for us, it's a project by project basis. We don't do a lot of residential, like single family residential.
Okay.
That's kind of one thing I wish we had done more of in the past few years. And I think that we'll look at more for the next few years. I think the reason why we haven't is I think we're a little lazy. And I think the single family management is significant.
Yep.
It's like, it takes a team. And so, back in the day, we're like, commercial real estate, you can have 2 people run $100 million of commercial real estate, in theory, if commercial real estate holds up, Whereas residential, you do need teams. Like, I look at people like Mandy Branham and also Brady McDonald, they have teams. That is an operating company. But I'm like, it's pretty smart.
Well, economically, I love the fact that people will always need a place to live. Yeah. And if the infrastructure is there, you've got sewers and water mains, people aren't just going to go dig new fields. And if they're not leaving Canada, they're still going to need a place to live. So I've always liked that. Commercial space, that's a great segue. What do you see now that we're in this ridiculousness? How do you see that affecting things? I know you're probably, medical is probably not going anywhere. I know you said you like them as tenants. Talk to me a little bit about your business model around that.
Yeah, I would say, because of my husband's background in commercial real estate, the covenant has always been the focus. Who is the tenant? Are they a AAA tenant, or are they something almost equivalent to that? And I would say most of our tenants, we have one restaurant tenant. So we have very few tenants that are in that kind of most high risk zone.
So what do you consider low risk? What's a low risk tenant?
Yeah, so I would say, well, it's funny because you would have said dental was low risk until recently. Everything is shifted, right?
You'd think that'd come back though. People still have teeth.
I do think you will, but you literally would have thought that a dentist would never be at risk. And I have a neighbor, and I have a piece of a personal property that one day we might develop. And our neighbor there is a dentist, and he's like, I have no job right now. I'm unemployed. I'm like, that blows my mind that a dentist is unemployed. I would say medical usually, but that said, medical got hit really hard, for the past few months. All of our medical tenants, no one was seeing patients except for emergency patients. So, okay, let me say this. During a pandemic, I don't think there's anyone that is safe.
Not really, no, because you never know what's essential. I mean, if you're
No, unless you're an essential service, unless you're the hospital, unless
you own the police building, like,
like really, and that's what I mean. I think in my head, I'm still in this season.
yeah,
Really, like, let's just put that aside. So like outside of that, I would say strong businesses that have been around for a while, that's often a general rule that they're pretty stable and that they have a buildup of cash flow. That said, go look at Good Life. They're not my tenant, but I know people that they are the tenant. 0 rent paid the past few
really?
months.
That's because
0.
they stopped collecting membership dues. You know what LA Fitness didn't do? They just keep charging my credit card every month.
Oh, really interesting. But I would say in general, medical is really good. Businesses that don't seem that fancy, like IT.
Yeah, IT is going to be a good one. Yeah.
All of ours fit into this, either medical, IT, supply chain, tertiary medical, again, the odd restaurant, the restaurant tenant, it's a mixed use. So we have a residential upstairs. Yeah. So again, feel pretty good there. But to your point, do I know what's going to happen? I have no idea what's going to happen. I am concerned. I'm in the concerned camp. Now, I know that in our community, there's tons of people that are like, there's no slowdown of anything and there's going to be no crash and this is like the best time ever. And hey, they might be right and I might be missing out on upside. I'm always cool to miss upside, so long as I feel like my downside is protected. Right. And I think right now we're in a fake economy. We're in a stimulus-driven economy. I have a tenant that was actually problematic and in arrears before COVID. Guess who's caught up? Because of SEBA.
Yeah.
So like none of this is real for people that think
frustrating.
Well, I mean, it was great. We got caught up. This is like fantastic. Like they owed us like $25,000 and I got all of it in full, which I wouldn't have got probably if there was no quarantine. And that didn't come out. But so anyone who's looking at this economy as indicative of what's coming, they're totally missing the point. Everyone is on some kind of stimulus in some capacity. Nothing is real right now. Yeah. I don't know the timeline of the real. Is it 6 months? Is it 12 months? Is it 18 months? Is it 24 months? I think it really depends on way too many X factors than we could ever speculate right now. One is in Canada, like how much stimulus will Trudeau continue to dish out and in what capacity?
I don't think he even knows.
We don't know. So like part of me is like, is it doing like a dollar cost averaging approach? You know? Do you just buy a house? Do you just buy one a month from now on and you're going to just catch the thing? Cause like, we don't know. And then there's the other side of it, which is holding too much cash could be very problematic in the next.
Oh yeah.
So literally I am juggling the whole, I have a very high cash position right now.
Yep.
So I'm like, okay, have a high cash position. I just killed a massive development, which is unfortunate. It was a conversion. Literally in January, this was the best deal of my lifetime. And then now I'm like, it's not the climate because it's a multi-year project and the usage as is, it was vacant for years before this. If I don't get approved, I'm actually screwed. So literally my multi-million-dollar upside, I'm going to just go like, I'm going to pretend that that's not there because my downside would just be so painful. And I don't think today is the day to be bullish. I really don't.
Yeah, I feel the same. And I like that you can be okay with that decision. And I'm strongly encourage people to be very real about what you feel your downside is and whether you're okay with that downside. And yeah, even if you have to give up something, a hypothetical, like I'd rather be able to sleep at night. And I can definitely, empathize with your, the cash position thing. Cause I hold cash for all my rentals and it's like literally watching inflation steal my money. As all this stimulus comes into our economy and devalues and dilutes our dollar, it's like this hidden tax that's sucking away wealth, but also increasing the value of real estate in the long run. So there's a positive there, but I mean, we all need operating capital. We all need to run our businesses. We all need to be able to weather the storm, whatever the storm is and however long it lasts. And
you want cash for, I think like the thing I most want cash for is the opportunistic plays on the other side of this.
Absolutely. Like even when credit's tight, and I think there's that deflationary period prior to the inflationary period. I mean, of course, we're already seeing some food goods and essential goods go up in cost. But I think that on the real estate side, we may see a slight deflationary in some cities, especially like Toronto. I foresee it happening just because it was already so inflated. But no one knows for sure. I'm hoping it's marginal, but I think that there is that opportunity, especially because if credit gets a little tighter towards that side of things, people who are sitting on cash are going to just clean up. They're just going to be able to.
What I can't answer is how could there not be a big crash? Okay, so like businesses are affected, businesses are closing, and it hasn't even started. So like I cannot see a world where businesses are not massively affected in the future, which means that jobs are going to be massively affected in the future, which means that the amount of transactions in general are going to be affected. Like I can't see an explanation unless there's again an X factor that we're not even realizing.
There has to be. There has to be.
Yeah, like I can't see. And so what I laugh about is a lot of these people that have never seen a crash, and I've never seen a crash. I started working in 2008 in a crash. I built a 7-figure company in a crash, didn't even realize it was a crash. I was just head down kind of working. But we've never experienced the pain. Like the real estate industry in Canada, I won't say Canada because Alberta has, but in Ontario, who has experienced the pain? Most people have not, and they just can't imagine that the pain could exist. And again, I'm totally happy to be wrong.
Same here. So I'm happy to be wrong. Here's what I speculate would need to happen in a responsible government with a well-informed, responsible, and educated leader. If you think about our economy moving, if you're a speedboat, our economy is a speedboat. You've got multiple anchors out the back. One anchor is taxation. Another anchor is interest rates and the level of interest rates. Another anchor is regulation. Those are three sort of anchors / levers that we can use to allow our economy in the inevitable. What you're describing is inevitable. Multiple business, probably 5 out of 10 businesses. We could see, factoring that a lot of them are small. So a lot of them are they were in the business or half in the business. Now they're out because they lost money. Wasn't good.
It's 5 out of 10.
You think so?
No, you think so?
I think it could be. I'm totally speculating.
That's crazy number, but you might be right.
But don't be deceived by that number, because there's a lot of people that are small businesses that from home operations do something on the side. They're dabbling. Yeah, they're dabbling. So it's not like I think 5 out of 10 storefronts are going to go under. No, that's not what I'm saying. But jobs are affected by even the dabblers, right? So if we see that, we see a contraction in our economy. A smart, educated leader would say, okay, we got to get rid of some of these anchors at the back. So we're going to reduce regulation. Interest rates are going to drop to 0, which they already are. So we don't have that lever anymore. So the only other lever we have is reduce taxation, or the more irresponsible version of that is throw free money at people, which I don't agree with. I think we should reduce their regulation, reduce their taxation, payroll tax, all that stuff, to just give them an incentive to jump in. Hey, now's never been a better time to just jump in and go. If it is possible. All I'm trying to say with that is, with the right leader, it's possible that we come out of this better. With bad leadership, it could go absolutely the other way. So I'm hoping that maybe Trudeau has some good advisors that can help him along the way. I don't know. Not to get political here.
And this, in every economy, there's opportunities.
There always are. Oh yeah, there could be great, no matter what, there's opportunities. So I don't mean to say anything of the sort. I'm saying understand the situation, understand what dynamics are at play, and then of course, let's be ready to pounce. And yeah, I think cash is needed right now. I think cash is needed to take advantage. If you're gonna come out on the upside of it, that's a smart move. Do you, like, if you were to talk to somebody, would you be in a buy position right now, or only if it's like an incredible deal?
Incredible deal. I've told people, like, wait, like this isn't, and again, if there's an incredible deal, especially if it's like, I would buy an emotional deal right now.
Okay.
Like something I've really wanted for a really long time. Like the part of the development, like I was like, I might be able to get this for a better deal 6 months from now if it's still, if it's still around. But I would say if there's like a property that you're like, oh, like I've literally I've had my sights on this forever. This is either like a missing piece to my puzzle, or something like, my dream property, or, something that it's again, more emotional, maybe that.
Right.
But I would say like, I was hearing someone talk about the levels of buying property in crashes. And there's like the first piece of like when it starts to drop. And then like, so there's like a whole bunch of, people that go out and try to buy those. And then the really opportunistic buying happens after that.
Yeah.
And you're less selective, I think, about what the asset is at that point. It's less about like, oh, it's this legacy piece on a corner that I like really want my great grandkids to see. It's more like the dollars of this are insane. Mm-hmm. And there's just no way that this isn't going to make sense if you can ride out the storm. And my dad always says this. He's like, the difference between who makes it and doesn't make it through a recession, it's like paper thin.
Yeah.
Like you're going to look like an idiot or a hero depending on literally like, it could be $100,000 difference.
Yeah.
So and I don't even know if you can still get lines of credit like and things like that right now, but if people can, I'd say like shore up on resources, like as much as you can shore up right now. And even for me, like why I started a new operating business 2 months ago was I was like, I want even more cash. Like give me all the cash I can get because it's going to go so far. And at least I felt like my theory, and I don't know if this is good, economics, I felt like in an operating business, like I'm somewhat protected with inflation, somewhat. I don't know.
I don't feel that way in mine, but
no,
I just feel like it's a necessary evil, right? Like you gotta have,
but at least like if you're in the market operating, like you can raise your price too.
Sure. Of course.
Like,
yeah.
You're creating some kind of vehicle. And because with leases, your lease is decided for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, with leases, you're not protected against inflation.
No.
I wonder if you could put like an inflation clause.
I'm sure. Oh, absolutely, you can. It's just a matter of writing it in, right? Like if CP, consumer price index exceeds this, we'll renegotiate at this price.
I'm gonna make a note of that. Tell my lawyer, future leases, inflation. No, but seriously, like
a special clause about consumer price index.
Yeah, like do you have one of those?
I don't have any commercial real estate like that, so I don't have that. So for res, I'm limited in what I can increase anyway, except for on new construction units, in which case I'm not limited in any way. I can just, as soon as I'm out of the lease. So I have one unit out of all my units that is not rent controlled. So if I ever decide, hey guys, this is the new rent. So you're sitting on some cash. Did you have any like thoughts about like putting it into precious metals or anything like that to hold value?
Yeah, I did not. I really didn't get gold until like a month ago. When someone I really trust, I'm like, so like, what do you think? And they're like, what I didn't understand is, I was like, it has no application.
Sort of, yeah, and sort of no.
But I was like,
jewelry and electronics.
But they're like, okay, but what application does like currency have?
Zero.
And I was like, shoot.
Toilet paper?
No, you're right. And I'm like, if I'm going by this application thing, and it's like, no, someone said that this is valuable. And there's this understanding, which is if you think about currency, it's the exact same thing. Someone said this is valuable, except now with the gold, it's limited, whereas this cash, it's infinite. So yes, it's literally on my to-do list. I have not invested in gold yet. I need to invest in gold. I invested in crypto, like Bitcoin and all those other things a couple years ago at the worst time. Some I invested in really early at the best time. I just like couldn't figure out to buy a lot of it back then. Then I invested more. What are your thoughts on gold?
Gold's expensive right now relative to silver, a lot, really expensive. So I've got it on my to-do list to buy some silver. I don't love like I'm with you there. I'm like, it's just kind of annoying that my government's been so irresponsible with our currency that I need to actually hedge myself against the loss of value of my currency. It's just annoying is all it is. It's not really an investment. It's just a hedge. It's an insurance policy.
It's a hedge.
Yeah,
I know. And I really think like, and again, I've never heard an economist talk about this. I just think operating businesses are the best hedge right now.
Yeah, well, you can change your price. Like you said, you can always just change your price 1 month to another. So that there's lots of
useful, which to be honest is why I started Go Fog It, because I was like, okay, real estate is all of a sudden, it's gone from like being a really safe investment to being borderline, is it even safe to go into a space? So I think like in my psyche, I was like, wait a minute, if I become best in the world at disinfecting, on one level, it makes all of my real estate safe, as well as all the real estate out there in the world. It gives real estate a chance, which is so funny because a lot of the people that have got involved with GoFogit have been in the real estate space.
Yeah, it's a complementary business.
Which is messed up, but yeah, I guess it is.
Yeah, that's really cool. All right, Diana, I don't want to keep you all day long. If people wanted to follow you in your journey or reach out to you, where should we send them?
Sure. I'm very introverted, but if they find me, I'm on Instagram. I'm at Diana Powerhouse. And then our mortgage administration company is ffbcapital.ca. Okay. And then if people need their spaces disinfected, it's gofogit.com.
Perfect. Okay. And then any parting words of wisdom for our listeners and viewers?
No, I just think I love Warren Buffett's golden rule, rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, don't ever forget rule number 1. Yeah. And I think I've never seen people go wrong holding on to too much cash. Mm-hmm. Maybe in Venezuela, but in 99.99% circumstances, playing the conservative option and having cash so that you can, take advantage of opportunities, most of the time, it's the right play, and it's always good to be prepared for a rainy day. So I would encourage people to consider, those cash positions and not be too aggressive.
Yeah, and I'll definitely second that on the not being too aggressive. Now, of course, neither Diana or I are giving any advice whatsoever. Always consult your financial advisor. But I certainly do appreciate your point of view. And thank you so much for doing this. It was great.
It's so great to finally connect, and hope to meet you in real life one day soon.
Yeah, hopefully when we can finally meet at events again, we'll have to put an in-person handshake there. Thanks for watching today's episode. Just a friendly reminder to please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you smash the like and subscribe and notification bell. And also leave a comment. And hey, while you're at it, why not share this episode with somebody you think it could help? It helps this podcast grow, and I would really appreciate it. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next episode.